Thank you very much, Hannah. And I don't think any of us can really thank you enough for the work you do in ensuring that we understand and reassurance that you give us as we continue with work in our local authorities. So thank you collectively. It gives me great pleasure to be here today representing Shetland. I am one of a team of many others, so please do not think what I tell you today is entirely just what I do. There are many other excellent staff that I have in Shetland that are working on this very day. I'm honoured actually to be here among all of you that are absolutely dedicated and committed to tackling poverty for our young folk across Scotland, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. And I'm sure that you're doing as good work in your local authorities as we are in Shetland. And thank you for my point of view, because I don't think any of us would be in the jobs that we're doing today if we didn't absolutely have a commitment to make sure that our young folk across Scotland are the folk that will be sitting here in the future taking forward services. And I'm really proud to be one of the folk trying to do that in my very small way up in Shetland. So, what am I wanting to highlight for you today? It's really about looking beyond the data. We have in many ways very similar issues in Shetland to what you have across the rest of Scotland, but we also have slightly different ones, and hopefully I will highlight some of that to you around the reality that we've got, not just in Shetland but in other local authorities too across Scotland. The level of child poverty in Shetland are actually relatively low. In 2015 there was 5.7% that young folk that lived in low-income families, compared to an average for Scotland of 16.5%. However, this figure has remained fairly static and actually masks the significantly higher cost of living that we have in Shetland, and that was actually highlighted by the Cabinet Secretary in her keynote speech, which I was delighted about and have tweeted already. So, we look at the SIMP data and the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, and Shetland bairns are absolutely concentrated in the middle according to that data. For bands 4 to 8, we have nobody in bands 1 to 3 and nobody, according to the data, in bands 8 to 10. Now, if I was to take you to anybody that's delivering services in Shetland, they will tell you, the frontline staff will tell you, we do have young folk that are in that poverty areas, that are actually in really low kind of household income situations. But it won't show up, it doesn't show up on the data because of the very, I'll use the word piri when I forget to say small, so you'll just have to bear with me, okay? I get really passionate about this, so you'll just have to excuse me. But we wanted then to look at our pupil equity funding, because it was allocated, some of you will be from the educational sector, so you will kind that allocation was based on the number of bairns in each area that was eligible and in receipt of free school meals. Well, 95% of schools across Scotland got that funding. Great. But in Shetland, only 68% of our schools got that money because we didn't have that high percentage of folk that are taking up free school meals. Why not? We know that there are families out there that really would deserve to get that funding. And it is believed, and I believe that too, it's about stigma. It's about being in a very small-minded community where the person next door, you're the only person in the whole of that school or the whole of that community that's actually receiving that free school meals. How does that feel going into school? Now, Hannah spoke about those that had maximised uptake. Please come forward at lunchtime and talk to me, because I want to kind what in local authorities you have been able to maximise that uptake, to persuade parents that really are fair to take that uptake up because they don't want to be different, they want to be the same as the rest. And that is so difficult in a piri community, to actually get folk to come forward and just admit that, because sometimes they can be living next door to a fisherman that's on a pelagic boat that's earning millions. And that's like just right next door. It's an interesting situation. So schools in Shetland have been guided to look at the needs of the individuals beyond these kind of traditional measures of poverty and identify the barriers that they have to children's learning and their attainment. Now, as has already been highlighted, you can't look at the child without looking at the parents and the wider family. And that's what we have to do, and that we have done. We have over 4,000 young folk in Shetland between 0 and 15, and we have another 2,000 of them that are aged 16 to 24. Some of you will maybe even have that in a secondary school, but that's our whole population across the whole of Shetland. We have 28 schools, so our Pirius school just now has 4 pupils in it. Okay, so that's a kind of context for you. I'm Director of Children's Services, so within my remit I have those schools, I have sports and leisure, I have libraries, I have youth work, I also have children's social work. What a brilliant start to have that folk coming together on a weekly basis as a management team. And some weeks we sit down with the agenda and then I just put it all to the side because we have a situation where a young person needs us to speak to try to sort out some of the issues that they have in their circumstances. And we just say, right, what are we going to do? How do we keep this young person on island? Because when it really gets too bad for West, we have to put them off island. So while we cannot deliver services in Shetland, we have to access some of the services you will access. But it costs West about $250,000 to actually have a young person off island for a year. So you're speaking about costs and you're speaking about challenges. That's an example of that. So the Shetland Partnership established Shetland's Commission on Tackling Inequalities in 2015, and they produced a document called On the Level, which if you're very au fait with IT, you'll be able to find that no bother at all. They heard directly and indirectly from people in Shetland, and that's about one of the ways of gathering information for West. Within the community, they reported their findings on a really robust evidence base, and it meant that we had a common understanding across both the public and the voluntary sector about what it actually meant for our folk in Shetland to live in that inequalities. So that informed the allocation of resources. Money, believe it or not, is an issue because of Shetland's high cost of living. The minimum income standard for remote and rural Scotland shows the cost of a standard basket of goods can be significantly higher for some of Shetland's households. For example, a couple with 2 small children living in a rural part of Shetland could pay up to 30% more in living costs than folk in a similar household in an urban community elsewhere in the UK. And I'll touch on that later in one of the examples. The relatively high cost of living in Shetland is driven by 4 main factors, and they've actually been touched on probably a bit today. And I want you to think about your own local authority and think to see if this is the same for you. Higher food costs, higher costs for the household goods and their delivery. Now that's an interesting thing because still couriers, when you order something for the internet, will say, oh, we don't deliver overseas. Overseas, people, we're part of Scotland. Not something that we want. Higher home energy costs and higher transport costs. Now the Cabinet Secretary mentioned that in his introduction, and we heard already from some of our scheme from Councillor Kelly earlier on, because she spoke about an example from Shetland. So these drivers are evident in the data collected and analysed by the Shetland Partnership. Fuel poverties, where households spend more than 10% of their income on energy bills, affects 53% of households in Shetland. Now, as Lynn McNiffen spoke about, it's important that we do what we can to help folk in Shetland tackle that poverty. And some of you will have that fuel poverty in the remote, the rural areas of the rest of Scotland as well. And we have to tackle it as a partnership. And I saw somebody for CAB here today. She was wearing a bonny t-shirt. And that's really important that we work closely with folk in all sectors to be able to do that. Not every household in Shetland is struggling financially or because we have higher employment rates, and you combine that with a slightly higher than average earnings, that does help reduce the cost of that higher cost for many folk. But measures of poverty are not always useful in Shetland, and therefore they do not take account the higher cost of living. That may mean that even in households where adults are actually working, financial hardship may be at a risk or actually be already being experienced. So in-work poverty in Shetland is the same as in other places, and that's been touched on by other folk already today. And it's really good that we are in line with that national work that's being done to help folk maximise their incomes and minimise their outgoings to reduce the impact of that high living costs. Now, Councillor Kelly Parry has already given an example of a single mom and the benefits to her of work undertaken in Shetland. I was awful glad it wasn't an example I was going to use, because it was good to hear that being, and I'm so pleased that that kinds of examples are being used, because sometimes we feel very remote by being away up yonder, away on, slightly removed, but we have the same issues, we have the same things happening. So I want you to take you to Unst. Unst is the most northerly island, okay? On there we have Baltisant Junior High School, the most northerly school in the UK, with a school roll of 83. Now that's from age 3 right through to age 16. And there are specific challenges for that folk living in Unst. High rates of fuel poverty, overall high cost of living 13% greater than the Shetland average, and actually 62% greater than the UK average. Lower income levels, with the average annual income being 24% lower than the rest of Shetland and 17% lower than the Scottish average. And if they want to access services, it's a 100-mile, 4-hour round trip with 2 ferry crossings to get to the dentist, the nearest supermarket, the nearest hospital and the nearest cinema. Now think for you, your own self, never mind the folk that you're serving to, how close are those services to you? Petrol costs £1.30 for a litre, so next time you go to the pump and you're filling up, think, wonder what difference that is between what they have to pay in Unst. The direct cost for a family to go to the supermarket, because you had to pay the ferry fares and the fuel, is £40 before they actually ever tack anything out of that supermarket. Now, in areas, when we're speaking about poverty in urban areas, you're speaking about somebody that can walk to those services. I'm speaking about folk that have, so that's helping you hopefully understand what it means to live in a high cost economy. Now, a really simple thing, I want you to think of how much a loaf of bread costs you. Because in Unst, it's £2.30. One item, that's what it costs. So that should put a bit of context. So the school community, not just the school staff, everybody that serves that young folk in Unst, came together and spent time considering what for them vulnerability meant in a rural context and which pupils were impacted upon that. Now, Councillor Kelly Parry also spoke about vulnerable households. I hope I'm giving you a really clear picture of what folks like here. The issues for them: free school meal eligibility, interventions as part of the child's plan, low income, access to transport, geographical access to services, and I'm not getting on the topic about inequalities of that. How many times do you go to the pictures in a year? Can you imagine? To the cinema. How many times do you think these folk manage to do that? Social inclusion, clothing, leisure, significant events, and internet access. So they noted that while some of the pupils, and Hannah spoke about the ACES criteria, they noted that some of the pupils had 1 or 2 of these vulnerabilities, but some of them actually experienced, well, most of them experienced several of them. So what did they do? This is one small community, staff and the partners with them collected the parents to bring them to the child's plan reviews, to the parents' evenings, to community events, to ensure that they actually were able to engage. If they lacked transport or required any kind of support, staff went and picked them up, which meant they had business insurance so they could transport pupils when was necessary. The health improvement officer is based in the school. They take your parent to school day, bring the parents in and get them involved. Support for bereaved pupils actually in the schools. The MSPs, the BT, the Scottish Southern Energy were all contacted, consulted, lobbied to make sure that the poor broadband provision, that they knew about that and how they could have an impact on that. There was a whole school nurture approach. The Pupil Equity Fund was used to design and staff a support programme over the summer holidays, because these young folk did not have that kind of support that was there for them. The school fund raised to ensure that all pupils are included in going on school trips, because normally they would pay an amount of money to actually go. Because if you're in Unst and you're wanting to go and see some of the great things that comes up to Shetland, it's not always that we can put it right up to Unst for the numbers of bairns that's there. Early learning and childcare, we've heard about that today as well. That will be increased to 1140 hours in Unst from October, and that again is to help parents be able to access things. I'm probably well over my time, and Hannah's not held up a sad face yet, so I'm going to keep going. My next example. 2 minutes, okay. Right, I'll cut out the example of Anchor, and if you want to hear about how we have used change fund money for the National Lottery to look beyond the data, so that the Cabinet Secretary was also speaking about how we need to change what we do and how we deliver it, and also the cultural change that we did, you'll have to hear from me later. And we'll move on to the other example in Soon Primary School. This is in Lerwick. So this is our biggest tune, where we have 2 streams in our primary school here. And they introduced a soft start. How many of you went to school in the morning, and if you were late, then they said, "What are you been, and why are you late, and why are you not in here before this class has started?" And you just suddenly crumbled. What they started there was, as soon as they come in the door, if they're like, "Hello, how glad to see you. We're that pleased you're come. Would you like to go through to our soft start area?" The difference that has made to that young folk, that for one reason or another have come to school late. The engagement that has meant to decrease lateness, to improve attendance, allowing individuals a safe space within which they can emotionally check in, to get the help to be organised for their day ahead and have the breakfast if they want. A really powerful, nurturing example, and I have a lot more that I can speak about around that, but I won't. But I do want to do, before I sit down, is to say I am extremely proud to be part of what we have done in Shetland to help this whole tackling poverty and tackling child poverty. And the child's voice, this is a pretty boy in Sund, and he is part of the Soft Start. And what impact he has said is, I can concentrate better in class. I'm able to play better. I want to be in school. It's much easier to be in class. And I can be in on time. That child's voice is so important. We have to listen to it, and we have to meet the individual needs of every child. Thank you for listening.